Morning, Dasha. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started, but before I start going on and on about things, does anybody have anything, issues that they need to raise or ask me? I believe your test is coming up shortly. It has to because it's the last section in the chapter that I'm teaching today. So we will be going over that very last section, section 2.5. We're also going to do a review in Socrative that has about 25, 26 questions because it's on the entire chapter, and I'm going to stand by waiting for anyone to ask me a question. I'm going to put you in groups, and I will be visiting each of the groups to see what your problems are. Now, just in general, I can tell you that you can't hear me until I enter your group because I'm going to go from group to group, just to give each of the groups turns to ask questions. Okay, hold on one second. Let me see what the question is. Can you example the change you made on the portfolio? Dasha, it's really nothing to worry about. I was going over it with a student. It was nothing more than Dr. Wyatt created those templates and she just made a typo. So I had to go and fix it. And I believe the specific typo was when she asked you to do, I think it was question number 4 where when she asked you to do, let's see, I think it was where you were averaging in the final exam, and she put that the final exam was worth 100 when she did her calculations, and it was really worth 200. So I had to go in there and fix that. And then I think there was one other thing. It might have been in part 3 where you were doing the average of all your test scores, and she had multiplied by 100, but she had also programmed it into the column that multiplies by 100 for you. So I had to take the 100 off. So what I would just do is in every single person's class, in every class that where I teach MAT1100, I have gone in and replaced the old template with the new one where I had made the changes. So it's nothing that you need to worry about because these templates have been made so that you are literally doing something that for each portfolio that takes 10 minutes. We're putting in all the formulas for you. So when going over the portfolio with one of my students who did it early, or a couple of them, they pointed that out to me, so I just went in and fixed it. So I would just go in there and grab the new template and do 2.1 and 2.2. Otherwise, your calculations for that section 2.1 would not come out right. So it only has to do with section 2.1, not 2.2. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen with you of your Blackboard shell, and I just wanted to remind you that there are 3 different ways that you can review for the test. 2 of them are additional, and one of them is additional, and 2 of them are mandatory. Like the one that we're going to do today in Socrative, that's a mandatory one. If you don't do it, it affects your participation grade. It gives you a chance to go through all the concepts while I'm here with you and ask any questions. So I make that available. We're going to do that today. Another review, which is optional, but I would suggest doing it because the test in ALEX is a mixture of book problems and the online ALEX problems, is right here in your Blackboard shell where it says Test 2 Review Topics. Those are that is the unit review for Chapter 2, the one that comes from the book. There are actually pages in the book. So you can go to your book and, for a clean copy of the problems, work out the problems, and what I've supplied for you are those same pages right here where it says Test 2 Topics Review, but with all the detailed solutions written out. So that's an optional review. And then, of course, the one in Alex, the practice test, that's mandatory. It's part of your grade. Okay, so you will have practiced twice. Theoretically, if you're here in class today, you'll be doing the first review, then you'll do the second one in Alex, and depending on your skill level, but I would suggest it for everyone to do this one that's included right here in your Blackboard shell. Okay, does anybody have any questions for me before I go on to that last section, which is section 2.5? Don't forget, when I put you in groups, you will be able to ask questions, so there's no need to just guess at an answer and, you know, end up not getting a good grade on the activity that we're going to do. All right. I don't see any hands raised. Nobody has anything in the chat box, so I'm going to go on to the material in section 2.5. First, I'm going to start with the one page in the lessons note packet that has some sample problems, and then I'm going to supplement those problems with going over a couple of various graphs that are in the book. I can just tell you right now, I might tell you that when I get done going over 2.5 and the pages in the book, which will probably only take about 20 minutes, for the activity that you're going to do at the end of class, you're going to need the formula page where I gave all those extensive examples the day when I took the entire period to do an example of every single type of area problem and volume problem. All of the formulas were on that one sheet in your lessons note packet. That was section 2.3. You're going to need that because there are several volume and area problems, at least I'm going to say about 8 to 10 of them on this end of class activity. The other thing you're going to need access to is page 192, where all the conversion facts are. Page 192 in the book, and hopefully you have a hard copy book. And if you don't, there, you know, I've showed you a couple of times how to access the e-text. Those things that I'm mentioning right now are mainly the things that you're going to want to put on your formula card. Things that, you know, any of those formulas or conversions that you think you're not going to remember. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to start with section 2.5, lessons note packet. Okay, I'm switching over to the doc cam. Okay, so what you're seeing here is a section that's on estimating things. So like, for instance, this very first problem that you see, you got to read the directions to see what kind of, how they want you to go about estimating it. When you estimate things, you don't get the exact answer. Otherwise, it wouldn't say estimate. You do like a rounded version that's going to give you an answer that is close to the real answer. That's what an estimate means. So this says that they would like you to estimate by first rounding each number to the nearest whole number. Therefore, you have to know which of the digits represent a whole number. That would be everything to the left of the decimal. So we're trying to make a decision about this number 71. In other words, should I keep it at 71 or should I bump it up to 72? You never round down when you're rounding. So you look at the number right next to it to make the decision. If it's 5 or greater, that would be strong enough to bump it up to 72, but as you can see, it is not, so this rounds off to 71. Likewise, right here, the 67 represents the whole number portion, digits on the left of the decimal. You look at the number next to it, it does have a 5. Anything 5 or bigger makes this bump up. And then bring down the operation symbol. Okay, then it's 71 minus 68, and you end up with numbers that, you know, you could just do in your head. 69, 70, 71, difference is 3. So that is just an estimate of the difference between these numbers without the hassle of all these decimals on the right, because then you would have to go to your, I mean, not that you couldn't do it by paper, but you're much more likely to have to need your calculator. Okay, here we're doing an estimation of a tip on a dinner bill of $63.43 by first rounding the bill to the nearest $10. Okay, that 3 is in the tens place. That's in the ones place. The 6 is in the tens place. So you're going to decide, is this closer? They're telling you to round to the nearest tens place. You're trying to think about this and whether this is closer to 60 as the tens place, or is it closer to 70? So because of this number next to it, or not, because of the number next to the 6 right there, the 3, we say that this is closer to $60. And you can put the 0.00 if you want. Okay, 63, I used that number to make my decision. I was trying to decide whether it was closer to 60 or 70. It's closer to 60 than it is to 70 because that number is not 5 or greater. If it was 5 or greater, I would have bumped it up to 70. Okay, then we're going to estimate 15% of 60. I like to just go with 10% because when I do 10%, it's a lot easier to do it in your head, and that is what estimation is about. Try to bring it to a condition where you can do it in your head. I mean, if you were doing 10%, all you have to do is think about taking the decimal in this number and moving it one place over. That's what 10% is. So you don't see a decimal here, therefore it's at the end, so it would be 6.0 or $6. Okay, so 10% is $6. Not that you'd be writing this out. You could actually do this in your head. 10% is $6. So if you wanted to bring it up to 15%, you'd need another 5%. If 10% is $6, 5% is $3. And that's how you can estimate the tip. If you were going to do an exact tip, then you would go like this in a calculator, 0.15 multiplied by 60, and you would get the exact amount of dollars and cents that you should give as a tip. Okay, so this is an estimate. Just like this is an estimate. It's not the actual true answer, but a rounded answer. Okay, then there's the less than or greater than, and I'm sure you have seen this many, many, many times. They start doing this very early in your school career. And they give all kinds of, silly ways to try and remember it, depending on how good or how bad your memory is. But basically, in general, you're going to hear it explained a million different ways. The symbol always opens up. And, when you're in lower grades and they're kind of just trying to say cute things, they might say that the opening of the symbol gobbles up the bigger number. It prefers the bigger number. And the pointy part pokes right into the smaller number. So regardless of whether the smaller or the bigger one is on the left or the right, just make sure that the opening gobbles up the bigger number. So like, for instance, this would be like this. So this can be read two different ways depending on what you say first. Like if I want to mention the 20 first, I could read it out loud like this. 20 is, let's see, the pointy part is poking into the number that is less than the other one, the smaller number. You could say 20 is less than 26. That's one way to read that statement. If you want to mention the 26 as the very first thing that comes out of your mouth, you could say 26. It gobbles up the greater number, the bigger number. So you could say 26 is greater than 20. So there are two ways to read any less than or greater than statement, depending on which number you talk about first. Just make sure that if you do want to rewrite it, that it always opens up to the bigger number. Okay, so then right here, let's see, I'd have to turn the symbol this way. The pointy part has to point to the smaller number. The open part has to gobble up the bigger number. Likewise right here, open up to the bigger number, and then likewise right here. Again, any of these statements can be read two different ways. If I wanted to mention the 734 first, I could say 734. It's open to the bigger number. In other words, it's gobbling up the number that is bigger or greater, either way. So you could say 734 is greater than 538. And if you want to read it the other way around, you want to mention this number first, you could say 538. The pointy part or small part points to the smaller number, or the number that is considered less than the other one. So you could say 538 is less than. Hold on for 1 second. Let me make sure I'm recording. Yes, I am. Is less than 734. All right, so less than, greater than. And you know that sometimes there's little pieces of equal signs underneath. Like if you wanted to say one number is less than or equal to another number. And I'll give you, a little bit of some examples of that too. Okay, like for instance, in this very next example, it says, let me make this a little bit bigger. Write an inequality for the following statement where C is less than or equal to. C is less than or equal to 5. Okay, then you really have to know what you're doing, because when both of them are not numbers, it's not as obvious as when you're comparing two numbers. And that is what this symbol allows you to do. It allows you to compare two numbers and make a statement about which one's bigger. Okay, the pointy part should always point to the number that is smaller or less than the other one. Okay, for each value, determine whether it is a solution for this statement. This says, and again, you could read this two different ways. You could read it as 15 is greater than y, but for purposes of filling out this table easily, it would probably be better if you read the letter first, which is why when I did all of these, I gave you two different ways to read the statement out loud to yourself. Let's say I wanted to mention the y first. That could be read, y is pointy part points to the lesser value or the smaller value. So I could say y is less than 15. This is a statement about what is acceptable for y. All values, because that's what y represents, all values less than 15, according to this statement. So, and we also call these solutions. So is 17 less than 15? No, it doesn't satisfy this. Is 20 less than 15? No, it doesn't satisfy this statement. Is 12 less than 15? Yes, that satisfies. So it is what we call a solution to this statement. Is 19 less than 15? No. So the only thing that's considered a solution is the number 12. And that's because, again, it's the only number that satisfies this statement right here. Okay, last problem on this lessons note packet. There's not much in this section. The really heavy sections are 2.3 and 2.4. Estimate 5% tip on a bill of $71.22, and then let's see how they want us to round. By first rounding the bill amount to the nearest $10. Okay, we already had one like this, but it's just a chance to practice how to do a tip that's not exactly 10%. I always do 10% first and then either give it another portion or I cut it in half. So I'm going to do what they said right here first rounding the bill to the nearest $10. Okay, so this is the tens place. So I would like to know whether to round this to 70 or 80. So I use the number right next to it, the one that I'm trying to make the decision about. I use the number right next to it to decide. If it's 5 or stronger, 5 or bigger, you round it up to 80, but it is not, so I'm going to leave this at 70 without all the hassle of the numbers that are on the right side of the decimal. Then I want to do 5% of this. So like I was telling you earlier, I always do my tips based off of 10%, because 10% I can do really easily in my head. I just imagine the decimal there, because when you don't see a decimal, it is all the way on the right, and slide it in one place, I would get 7.0, which is just $7. So 10% is $7. So if you want to just give 5%, you give half of that. Just cut it in half. And that's 5%, and that's 5%. So half of $7 is $3.50. And that would be the estimated tip it's estimated because you round it off instead of actually going 0.05 times 7122. Okay? So estimates and how to put less than or greater than. However, on the lessons note packet, the other various types of ways that you can see the information being presented to you is not on this page. So I'm going to share some things with you from the book coming from page 215 to 217. So here's some other ways that they could ask you to estimate things other than doing a calculation. Like for instance, let's say they give you something like this. They can, a classic question in estimation would be to give you a graph, different kinds of graphs. It could be a circle graph, it could be a bar graph, it could be a scatter plot, and asking you to estimate where something lands. Now, I'm not going to write in my book, but I just want to show you, a different kind of a problem that you might see on the test. Estimate the monthly cost of homeowners insurance in California. So you just go to California, and what this looks like right here is, let's see, this is the $80 mark. That looks like a hair above 80. So I'm going to say that the cost of homeowners insurance is slightly greater than 80. So when they say estimate, just basically all that you're going to see happen is someone going like this. The cost of homeowners insurance is slightly greater than $80. And some students might come in here and say it's slightly greater than 81 or 82. And if it's anything, very close, then you would be given credit for it. But the obvious answer that someone's going to put is they're going to use these lines to dictate whether they are above being greater than or below, which would signify less than. So that would be a very reasonable answer, what I've written right here as something for number 11. Do you think this estimate is too high or too low? That's the kind of question that's hard to ask on test because everybody's going to answer differently. That's, a matter of opinion. It may be too low, but who's to say for something like that? So I wanted to show you how it could be a visual thing when you're being asked to estimate. You just look at some kind of graph and estimate as closely as you can. Okay, let's look at other types of graphs that you might see. Here's a picture of one on page 216. So maybe they give you, instead of a bar graph, some scattered points. You've already done a portfolio where you did a scatter plot, where one of them you left them unconnected like this, and then you created a same, another version of that scatter plot, but in a connected fashion. So these are unconnected. This question asks you to estimate the minimum wage. That's what this table's about, minimum wages. This is the actual minimum wage dollar amount. This is the year in which it was that particular minimum wage. So this is an old table. So they're asking, in 2009, give us an estimate of the wages in 2009. So you're just going to try and line these up the best you can. So let's see. The wages here now get as close as you can to 2010, because that's going to be a very fair estimate with respect to the years. So I'm going to use this point right here to represent 2009, and I'm going to say that where that dot is, how high it is up in the air, because it's as far over as I would estimate the year 2009 to be. So I'm going to say that represents it. And then I come over here to actually get the minimum wage. Now, again, some people are going to say that that's about $7.20, because look, this space right here goes from $7 to $8. So, each little increment that you move up, you could think of it as, like, if you're a quarter of the way up, maybe that's about 25 cents. I'm going to say that this is close to the halfway mark. So I'm going to say a decent estimate would either be $7.30 or $7.40. So I'm going to say that it is something bigger than, and another way that you can give your answer is like this. If you don't want to give it with a greater than or equal than sign, you can use this symbol right here. This is the symbol for estimate. This means approximately. So W is approximately $7 and I'm going to say 30 cents. And they'll usually let you know in the writing of the problem whether they want you to use this symbol or whether they want you to use the approximation symbol. Just looks like an equal sign, only they're made out of squiggly lines. Let's see, what other kind of graphs? There's other graphs in this section. Here's another one on page 217. This is called a isotherm of a map. And it's kind of it's a mapping of, they create these isotherm maps when they're trying to chart the temperatures in certain regions of the country. So like, for instance, let's say that you were being asked to estimate what is the temperature in Miami according to this isotherm map. So let's do number 6 just so you could see that every time you go to do an estimate on a graph, you have to analyze the graph before answering. You have to see what is going on with respect to these lines. So the thing that I'm looking at is that it starts up here in the negatives and then it goes 0, 10, 20, 30. So the biggest thing to notice to get this answer right is that these are going up as you move down on the map, which is unusual, but that is the way this map is created. As you move down on the map, and we're going to have to do that to get to Miami. Miami is signified by the letter M. So let me go find M. It's all the way down here. It is beyond the 50-degree mark. And since I've just established the fact that these are going, the numbers are going up, the temperatures are going up as you move downward on this graph, this would have to be something bigger than 50 in order to follow the trend that the temperatures are going up. So I'm going to say that it is approximately, let's see, between here and here is 10 degrees. I'm going to say it's approximately 52 degrees. 52, 53, something like that. So problem number 6. Oops. On page 217. And so I'm going to say the temperature for Miami is approximately 52 2 degrees. Okay, so I shared some problems with you from the pages of section 2.5, and then of course that lessons note page packet, the page from the lessons note package was also from 2.5. And now what I want to do is mix all the concepts together, just as if you were taking a test, using me to help you anytime you get stuck. I'm going to make every single one of you a presenter before I open up the Socrative activity. When I make you a presenter, that means that you can share your screen. You can pull something up on a tab on your computer, and you can show it to the other people in your group. Furthermore, the other people in your group, if you want to say to them, hey, how did you do number 5? How did you do number 6? You can have a conversation about it. So hold on while I make all of you presenters, and when I get done doing that, I'm going to open up the Socrative activity. So just wait for me to tell you when to go into Socrative. Hold on just a minute. Let me go in here. Okay. Okay, you've all been made presenters now. I'm going to put you in groups, and once you go into your groups, you're not going to be able to hear me unless I go into your group. Then you'll be able to hear me, but you can type something into the chat box. I'll be visiting both groups off and on throughout the period. If you need to say something when I'm not in your group, then you can just type it into the chat box. Otherwise, you'll be able to hear me when I'm in your group. Okay, you can go to the Socrative activity now, and I'm going to move you into groups while you're signing on. Don't forget to put your last name, comma, your first name when you sign on to Socrative, and you can begin doing those problems. Call on me if you get stuck. what I did.